everyone. We're just going to mute everyone except for our hosts. I'm going to unmute our hosts. Hello, my name is Jennifer West. I am the Artistic Director of Muse West Concerts, and today I am situated on the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. Here in the English name is Vancouver. And we've just done a quick tech test, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce two professors who had a profound impact on how I teach music only over a 2-week course in the summer. Dr. Laszlo Némes and Dr. Arpád Tóth, who are coming to us. Are you in Budapest or Kecskemet this evening?
Me, Budapest. I'm from Budapest.
Okay.
I have just arrived from Kecskemet back to my home in Budapest.
Okay, wonderful. So we are thrilled to have them here, and today we're going to have some time with them to see some of the strategies and to discuss Kodály. And I want to give a particular thanks to Professor Kenny at Old Miss. You brought some colleagues and friends and people with you, and my friend Charles is here from Toronto, who I've known for a really long time. So I'm really happy that everyone is here. We're going to have some time for audience questions at the end. Hi, Charles. I was so excited when I saw that you registered. I'll give a brief introduction to the Kodály method, and then I'm going to be quiet because we have two experts here. And I will give my bias right away. I am half Hungarian, so this instantly resonated with the deepest part of my soul, to know that my grandparents didn't speak much English, and that maybe some of these folk songs were sang to them or to my mother. It got quite emotional a few times for me, hearing the language and hearing the melodies. But here's a brief introduction. The Hungarian composer, musician, and educator Zoltán Kodály believed that only the best is good enough for children. The Kodály concept is an experience-based approach to teaching that leads to the development of basic musical skills and musical literacy using resources from the folk heritage of students' educational population. When students are taught by highly skilled teachers, such as the two people we have leading us today, they become adept at creating and interpreting music in such a way that they can be lifelong participants and contributors in music. So would our panelists like to add to that general description of the Kodály method?
Maybe just a few. And I would say not only children, and not only basic musical skills, and not only the folk songs. In Kodály's concept, the teaching of music in schools for children is inseparable from the training of professional musicians. I could also say that in his concept, the music education of the professional musicians and the audience always form an inseparable unit. In regards to the training of the music professionals, Kodály throughout his life stood up for a comprehensive way of training, encompassing a thorough general musicianship training, resulting in a more cultivated musical hearing and more cultivated musical intellect.
I also would like to add and resonate to both of you that actually for me what is important now for me to emphasize that Kodály method is really an international concept. And it is, you don't need to know this kind of Hungarian folk songs to be a Kodály expert, although for us Hungarians, of course, it is an important part of it. But everyone has a kind of cultural and musical heritage environment. And I think is important to emphasize now in this environment for us that anything what you think can be the mother tongue of your students or of your school. So in general, the Kodály based education takes care on your own traditional heritage, musical heritage, and the musical skills what we achieve is can be based on this kind of musical mother tongue as well. Jennifer, we cannot hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
Oh, yes, thank you. My next question for our panel is, for Kodály, what made a good musician and how on earth do we get there?
Singing, singing, and singing, I believe, and it is not it's not me who is speaking, but it's Kodály. Kodály summed up his belief about musical training with these three words, or with this one word that he kept repeating, as he believed that singing was the essence in music education. He himself was from very early age attracted to vocal music. His first opus is in fact Song Cycle. And right in the beginning of his career, he composed choral pieces for various ensembles. So singing for him as a composer was also important. And years, or I should say, decades before he started to talk about the importance of music education for young people, he already, I should say, waged a war against ill-trained musicians, because he believed that the technical skills are not enough to produce a high quality musical art. So he truly forced young musicians to develop their oral skills.
And Dr. Tóth, what would you say? What makes a good musician according to Kodály?
Yes, it is so difficult to say, but Laszlo framed it very, very well. I would like to express two important details. What I think during my my international career, I realized that I keep saying and I keep emphasizing all the time. One is the musical, so the large amount of repertory what a musician have to go through to speak music as a language. I believe a lot that we, if you want to be good musician, you have to do just simple, make a lot of music with different directors, with different environment, in different instruments, different composers, different styles, and this somehow puts together, and this will surely develop your musicianship training. In our institution, we emphasize it a lot that that our students working with many great musicians, I believe, and in every classes we going through a lot of repertory, and this is important part of our education. The second thing is, which I think it's a little bit sounds abstract sometimes, but our musicianship training is always focusing on this kind of skill, what we say, what we call inner hearing. I believe that that this is a particular skill what a good musician have to have. Of course, there are some geniuses in the world, in the music history, who didn't needed Kodály method to develop their inner hearing. So Bach was a perfect musician, or Beethoven, but and with an amazing inner hearing, even though they didn't educated in the Kodály way. By the other hand, I have to say our method is one of the greatest in that way, that we recognize, or Kodály recognize, the importance of the inner hearing, of the imagination of the sound inside yourself, makes you a good musician.
Thank you. And that's one thing that I really noticed this summer, is that my inner hearing really improved quickly. And that even because our classes were at 5:30 in the morning in Vancouver, So it was a struggle, but I found that I became more alert and that I could look at a page and I could now hear the intervals in my head more clearly and more confidently. And just to go through that inner hearing is something so important. Our next question is again for both panelists. We have a really big focus on music for young children. And I'm wondering, what sort of tips do you have for introducing this method to people that are teaching preschool music, ages 3, 4, and 5, where they are toddlers and very small ones?
Well, maybe this is a rule that I start. Okay. Well, I believe that.
Yes, it is. It is.
Thanks, Arpád. I believe that the development of singing can be started during this age, but I should add that it's even better if it starts even earlier. First of all, parents and carers in the nurseries or in the schools should sing a lot to children, as through beautiful singing, parents and carers can awaken interest in children for music. We have to remember that development of singing skills during the early years grows out from the children's desire to imitate. If singing is a daily activity attached to the various activities during the day, children will sooner or later start singing. In regards to early childhood education, we should also emphasize that the child's physical and intellectual development should always be in harmony, which in practice means that the children's physical and cognitive abilities should be in harmony. Singing should not be presented to young children as an activity separate from all the other activities that they do, but should instead at all times accompany their various activities. And singing should be presented always as a playful thing. Songs combined with traditional or creative games, mainly rhythmic games involving movements, carried out in a group activity, are truly powerful in young children's education. Singing and the games should be a source of joy, and they should include everyone. It will help to form communal bondings, at the same time develop essential musical skills.
I believe also that this is a little bit confusing if we are talking about music education by this young age. More likely, I would like to say we have to focus on education, which has to be music emphasized in that time. Whenever you try to get asleep your children, or whenever you try to make them happy riding on your knee or anything, you realize how inseparable is move and make music during your education or parenting activities. I also think that sometimes it is a little bit misleading if we believe that now we are singing in choir, we are performing something, but Laszlo already told that, that it is not definite, this kind of music education, not going to the direction of musical performance, not necessary, but more like this daily activity or this natural behavior of parents, of kindergarten teachers need to emphasize this daily activity, like musical activities. For me, really, imitating movement through singing or through speaking or through dancing is also a musical activity, and this has an amazing impact in children development. I also have to admit that I'm lucky to lead my community choirs, children choir, where very often toddlers or 2-3 years old participating, which doesn't mean in that way that they perform or in their costumes or something, but they are present in the music lessons, and they more or less they can follow us too. And you just you can be really surprised sometimes how a 4 years old can responsible already for some of the musical activities. Of course, I don't want to say that then they are the basis of our children's choirs. This is not true, but definitely they have the opportunity to participating in musical activities. They are amazing. This is also for me really like give me goosebumps all the time when, for example, two parents coming and they are not able to sing, these two parents, two adults, and they bringing their children who, of course, because never heard lively singing before, cannot sing. And after 2 or 3 like playful activities, their children, who is almost unable to walk alone, but can sing better than their parents can. And this is always, I think, it's a reminder for us how many things children can do and how powerful our education can be.
I definitely agree. Our next question, we have a quick time for this next question. How is conducting fundamental to the Kodály method? Because I didn't have a chance to take a conducting course this summer. I haven't taken my Kodály level 1 yet, but I know that conducting is a big part of the first level. How is conducting part of this method?
Maybe this question was addressed before to me. If I can answer this, I don't think that actually conducting is important in the Kodály method. I think choral singing is important and the choral education, and this of course led by, hopefully, by a conductor who is highly educated. So actually leading a choir or singing in choir, that could be especially in a school environment and also for adulthood, we believe, and in Kodály method, choral singing is one of the key elements of our method, because choral singing is the key to valuable big pieces of music repertory for non-musicians especially. It is always surprising, I think, compared with a non-professional violin player, how much better or how amazing quality we can achieve even with children's choirs, with non-professional choirs all the time, and we can take part to perform great pieces of music literacy.
Makes sense. Dr. Némes, how can we use the Kodály concepts that we learn from the basics to analyzing advanced repertoire from the Western European canon? And I want to acknowledge that we are going to address some issues later in the webinar, which might require a second webinar or 3 or 5 about music that represents the people that we actually teach. But I've noticed, Dr. Némes, that you recently did a course on the Beethoven violin sonatas. And can we apply these Kodály concepts to very advanced repertoire like this? Because we have many graduate students with us today who have achieved a very high level of musicianship. So do you have any tips on how we can apply these basic principles to professional repertoire?
Yes, Jennifer, you are referring to this course that I'm teaching at, and it's the core name of the course is The Exhale, and it was created by a world-renowned violinist, Gwendolyn Mason, who is currently on faculty at the Music Conservatory in Geneva. And I am working with professional and amateur violinists, and in fact, there are very few, actually, there are a few students in my class who have played all the time violin sonatas by Beethoven, and it's extremely exciting how we discover this music from a different perspective, which is singing. Um, uh, as we have talked about the importance of singing in music education and the importance of singing for the developing of the musical ear, the musical imagination, and we use singing as a tool to to reveal various layers of the music, but not only melodic elements, but even more importantly, harmonic content of the music. And we use solmization as a tool to understand, for example, key relations, to understand structures, understand formation, classical formation. Just a very quick example, I will share a slide with you, which is a reduced score for the development section of the Opus 12 violin sonata, the first one in the Opus 12 series, where you will be able to follow the music and you will be able to sing along the bass line with the solmization, which will beautifully outline the harmonic structure happening in the development section. Let me just
Fantastic. Just
take you
for our
there.
participants, we're now moving into the section of the webinar where each professor here will have 5 minutes to share an express activity very quickly. And then we're going to move into some deep questions at the end. The students submitted some fantastic questions that they have. And so, yeah, Dr. Némes, when you're ready, we'll go
I'm
through
ready.
the activity.
Yeah, here. So I play the music and try to sing along the bass line. And then we got back to the recapitulation section. So this particular activity, during this activity, we reduced the harmonic content to a simple bass line. Think about a violinist who usually analyzes this music by looking at the score, finding the pitches and identifying harmonies. But do they really feel where the music is moving? Do they really experience through their voices how the harmonic content of the music unfolds? So I find this very valuable, and it's interesting that all the people that have never been exposed to solfa, how quickly they pick this up. I always say that if you are a good musician, solfa is never a problem, because you will quickly understand how this can be connected to tonal theory and beyond.
Thank you. And that's a wonderful activity. And it was hard to sing along the bass, so I'll have to practice that after. That's fantastic. Dr. Tóth, do you have something you would like to share with us, a 5-minute activity?
Yes, I try to be good in frame in 5 minutes. Maybe we have a little bit kind of similar activity today. I'm so sorry we didn't talk about this with Laszlo. But the fact is, maybe we always feel that we want to show a little bit higher than as usual educator thinking about Kodály method, as we already talked about this. So maybe that's why it is a little bit similar, and we are going from a little song until to a great piece.
And it's also, let me just add that it's also quite limited what you can do on Zoom. So this kind of activity maybe is more relevant to this online situation. Sorry, Arpád, to interrupt.
Exactly, no, exactly. So here is a beautiful little a psalm, a Jewish psalm written in Hungarian Jewish dialect. And if you are disturbed by this, maybe yes. So written in Jewish Hungarian Jewish dialect, and this is one of the key psalm of Jewish people here, like a second hymn of them. And why don't we try to sing it together? You have only one chance to listen it, and then you will be the next who are singing with psalmization, with no, or with any kind of singing. I will show you once. Repetition. Mi fa la mi, re do ti do la. Your turn, second line. La ti do mi fa re do ti la. And try. La 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 fa mi fa repetition without me la la. Isn't it beautiful? Yes, it is, of course. And now just can I ask you to simplify a little bit this melody? Let's put a beat to it. La ti do re mi, la ti do re mi fa mi re do ti la. Your turn. La ti do re mi fa mi do do. Excellent. And can you try now to do it in this kind of swing rhythm? La, ti, do, re, mi. Here we go. Mi, re, do, ti, la. One more time. Mi, la, ti, do, re, mi, fa, mi. Re, do, ti, la. And why don't we try mi, la, ti, do, re, E minor. Mi, la, ti, do, re, mi, fa, mi. Re, do, ti. Can you hear the music? And sing with me. Thank you.
I did not know you were going to head to Smetana. That is, what a connection. And I just have to say that, we're getting lots of thumbs up. That just blew my mind. A lot of what I saw this summer was starting with these basic principles and then like using the Firebird or using Tchaikovsky and using all of this repertoire, really complex. Or there was Gershwin that Dr. Némes used. I wrote down all the repertoire because I thought this is too cool. Now I want to address something very important. And I hope that our professors have a little extra time because I want to give this question as much time as our participants would like. We, especially in North America, have really been awakened to inequity, racial injustice, in particular for people of color. And, as someone who has the same cultural background as Kodály, I was instantly just like, okay, this is me. This is like the fiber of my being. I saw and heard myself and saw and heard my grandparents and my great-grandparents. But I want to make sure that this method is something that everyone can see and hear themselves in. And a question from our students that have joined us today is, how can young children, people of color, hear themselves in this music? And how do we choose repertoire that's not offensive or minstrel or racist? Big question. Take your time. Oh, Dr. Némes still has his microphone muted. There we go.
If I may start, I would probably start with looking at what Kodály thought about the importance of traditional music and why it is so widely used and what we learn from this. First of all, although Kodály's concept of music education is deeply rooted in the great European classical musical tradition and musical traditions of Kodály's native country, Hungary. Kodály, I should say, together with his friend and most important co-worker, Bartók, always stated that getting to know and appreciate the art and folk art of other peoples can bring nations closer together in other areas of life. Already in 1940s, Kodály included some characteristic melodies of neighboring peoples in the school song collection. But already in 1929, he stated that the Hungarian young people should get to know the song treasures of other peoples, sing their songs, preferably in their original language. Cultural differences are recognized and are celebrated in teaching practices associated with Kodály's name. This is proven by the fact that our foreign colleagues have done so much important research work on a song repertoire that they use systematically in their own teaching. According to Kodály, it is our duty to preserve the culture of our ancestors. But the preservation in the Kodályan sense means two things, I believe. On one hand, it's not to forget and underestimate one's own musical traditions and as an uncivilized or a primitive culture. And on the other hand, to look for a new function and a new way of life for this tradition. I would like to emphasize one important point. And Kodály and Bartók is an example for us in that respect, that they did very important research work. They selected the repertoire, they analyzed the repertoire, they transcribed, they developed a very close connection, and they very carefully selected what is to be used in the schools, what is appropriate to use in the school because of its language, its musical idioms. And I believe that we have to do the same. And it's our responsibility to choose the songs that we use that will not hurt anyone's feelings, but songs that are of high quality in terms of educational value as well as cultural value. We are aware of the movement that started in the United States in regards to the revision of repertoire. This has to be done with scholarly care I believe that the revision of this repertoire will select those materials that can be used in a culturally inclusive environment.
That's very well said, and I would like to hear Dr. Tóth's comments on this, but one thing that just came to my mind, if people could raise their hands or give a thumbs up if you know the spiritual Wade in the Water. Does anybody know? Oh yes, thank you. So I'm just already thinking of that spiritual and how you could talk about form and ask students, does this melody change a bit? And where do we see this melody come back? Or ask them to think about which harmony is best paired with this part of the melody. So what I saw in the activities in my Kodály courses this summer was taking any piece of repertoire, whether it's from Japan, Korea, China, French Canadian speaking communities. I am actually a French immersion teacher, so I teach bilingual French classes. And so for me, finding repertoire that's French as well is going to be important, French speaking. So I think that looking at any repertoire that is from your community where you're teaching and applying things like form and harmony to them is one step. But I've also been reading a book recently that even that is a Western European way of listening and consuming music. So there's just so much work to be done. But I want to encourage people that it is a start to, as Dr. Némes has recommended, to use scholarly precision and care to look at the lyrics. And I'm going to try to find some resources to send to Professor Payne at Ole Miss. That there was a course in Boston this summer about culturally responsive Kodály teaching. And they threw out half of the songs in the Orange 150 American book. They threw out half of them. They're like, no more, we don't do this anymore. So I will try to find that and email him, but just as an encouragement that you can, yeah, just find things that resonate with your community. Dr. Tóth, what would your comments be about responding culturally to the people that we teach?
I actually I think I just can add more problems as it's really a great question of the 21st century. So I want to say it is not only a musical or music educational question, and maybe it so the answer or the resolution will come from a cultural consensus or discussion. But I just want to point out two things. So identity is also a big problem in our world today. Who we are, where we are come from, are we the same who my parents were? And this is also musically a question. So I would make a question mark also for this whole problem, that it is not only I am not only white or black or Jewish or Slovakian or any kind of, but we also creating our communities and our identity day by day, actually. So this is also makes me more questions in my head. The other thing as well that maybe look like from the United States that Hungary is culturally not as mixed as North America, and I have to say that we have also a lot of this kind of problems. So I mean that we have gypsy people whose living style is like so completely different than you cannot imagine. So where really the school system is broken already because of the minority villages. Or we have a great problems or historical the differences between our foreign countries, Slovakia, Romania, and or the neighboring countries. So it is a lot, and what Professor Némes already explained, that music can be the answer for this kind of questions. So musical material what we teach will be one of the first bridge what we can make between cultural differences. And as Béla Bartók's life work has a lot of connection with Slovakian folk music in that time, when Slovakia was our first enemy, our number one enemy in the history. In that sense, today also I believe that music and music repertory will be the cultural bridge, the first cultural bridge which will save our humanity. I think the details I cannot say too much, but I really think that larger resolution we need to deal with this problem.
Thank you so much. And I know that the students are going to be doing, the professor from Ole Miss was kind enough to send me the syllabus. It looks fantastic. And they're going to be doing a song research assignment, which is pretty common at a higher level Kodály course to do a song research assignment and analyze the song. And just one of the practical tip that I picked up this summer is, where do the lyrics come from? Who historically performed this? Who historically has claimed authorship of this song, and are they the true author, and can we find the author of this song? And those are like, and I'm a very beginner at this, so forgive me, this is like just me remembering a few tips I heard this summer. I hope we have time for one really important question that that was submitted to us, and is, what are the non-negotiables of the Kodály method? What are things that must be included for it to be considered Kodály method? And then I hope we have about 6 minutes left for Q&A from our wonderful live audience. So what would be the non-negotiables that must be included for it to be Kodály?
When I teach when I teach on Kodály's educational philosophy, I usually sum up these essential features in 4 points. First of all, number 1, art and music is an indispensable means of humanistic education. 2, high-level music appreciation cannot be reached without the training of musicianship. 3, comprehensive music education and musicianship training should be primarily vocal. And finally, the most essential material for music education during the early years of training lies in the traditional songs, monophonic songs. Later on, the pupils must gradually reach the stage at which they are capable of understanding art music. And probably we should add a 5th one, which is about musical values, that Kodály spoke a lot about, but never really explained what he meant. Although when we read Kodály's writings on music education, we can guess what he really meant on values in music, or what values in music meant for him.
Fantastic. So one last question, then we'll turn it over to our audience. When Kodály went into the puszta and he heard these folk songs, what did he hear?
If we would have more time, we could show you original performances. And I have to say that maybe it would be a little bit surprising for you. That was a culture which almost disappeared at time. It wasn't sang by beautiful young women with a great range and beautiful colored voice. It was the old songs of mostly old ladies who didn't want it to tell because this is already so old stylish. So actually, I think we needed Kodály's and Bartók's and his followers great their genius to understand that these little songs are not only materials for a song arrangement. They are not just beautiful melodies. These are beautiful texts which formed through year 100. This is the Hungarian folk song, what they heard. It wasn't the most beautiful thing, I think, what they ever heard, but it was an essence of our culture. And if I can add one more word, the Hungarian folk song was and understood Zoltán Kodály and Béla Bartók that this is the essence of human beings, or our humanism and our Hungarian way of humanism. And this is the most what we can expect, I think.
What constantly fascinates me in Kodály's life, that he was an extremely progressive man. He was receptive to newness and novelty. He was a regular member of the intellectual circles. He made friends with some of the most progressive figures of Hungarian and the international elite. And he found excitement in the song of the simple peasants, in the music that a lot of people despised during that time. And this is always a fascinating thing for me to realize how passionate he became about this style of music, and how he and Bartók realized that this cultural and aesthetic beauty can be the foundation for the creation of modern Hungarian music. Modern on the foundation of the most ancient.
That's a really wonderful sort of conclusion to the formal aspect of this fantastic webinar. I am so grateful to our panelists. Can we give them a virtual round of applause? If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. I'm a grade 5 teacher, so I got this. You can raise your hand virtually and I will unmute you. Yes, my friend Samuel, please go ahead.
I'm Samuel Agbenyo, a Ghanaian and a graduate student at Ole. I actually admire this lecture so much, and I think it's a great method which all children should be made to benefit from. Now, I want to find out if the same techniques in the Kodály method work for all manner of students. For example, children with special needs. Maybe let me give a specific example. Those with visual problems, those with hearing problems. Does the same method apply to all of them? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to repeat the question in case people couldn't quite hear due to tech issues. The question is, will this method work for students that have special learning needs due to visual impairment or hearing impairment? What a fantastic question. I love it.
Can I have this? Samuel, thank you so much for this question, because I think it was a little bit missing link. That I have to say that the Kodály method or Kodály concept will never answer you this kind of questions. Because it is not a settled down method. We have many former students of the institute who started to applying Kodály method for special needs students. But the fact is that our concept will never give you the real resolution of your classroom challenges. It is actually the well-educated music teacher who will find a good resolution through their great education and their high skills. And I think it's very, very important to understand that there will be nobody answering these questions. Only you, and you will find out through the principles what are given.
Kodály believed that as a music educator, we should create an access for people to music and teach them how to connect with music and how to appreciate music. I would like to join what Arpád said. It's very important to remember that Kodály never developed a method for teaching music. He gave us principles, he gave us ideas, he led us for the realization how important musical culture is in our lives, and what an impact of music learning can have on both the emotional and intellectual development of young people. But it is up to the teachers to find ways in that given situation with those children, regardless of age, circumstances, cultural differences, how to connect them with music. He believed that music is for everyone, and it should belong to everyone. But of course, the ways of musical receptions differ from people to people. But the concept itself, I agree with Arpad, will not give you the answer to this very important question of yours.
I just want to add a little bit to that. What I noticed from my Kodály activities this summer is a variety of ways to learn about music. In our musicianship class, Dr. Némes had us doing very difficult ostinato body percussion while having to sing a different rhythm. So we, for students that may have some difficulties with hearing, they could have an educational assistant who has permission to help them move their hands to a beat. Who has consent to help their body move. And also for students with auditory difficulties, we have the stick notation method as well that could help a bit. So there were some very practical things that I saw that could be useful. But again, yeah, it's totally dependent on that individual pupil. Any other questions? I think we have time for one last question. Yes, my friend Lawrence, please unmute your microphone, Lawrence.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Trout. I'm a second-year grad student at Ole Miss, and my first year at Ole Miss, I played a Bartók folk song on the piano, and it was apparently written from a recording he had made in Hungary from a dance, and that's where he got the melody. Do you professors think it is better to teach about another culture of music by the actual recording that you've made, or making the melody into something that translates easier to the foreign audience?
I believe that it is interesting to get to know the origin of the melodies, but as soon as these melodies are set in a composition, they become something different. They become art music. And while it's interesting to know the origin, and it may even have an influence on how we interpret this music, and that can help us finding the ways how to play this music. It's actually not absolutely necessary to go hear the original versions, and to hear the original versions is not that easy either. So if you want to go to the Hungarian Academy of Sciences and look for the wax cylinders there and find that song, how it was performed, you know, 70, 80 years ago, that's quite complicated. Arpad, you can take over.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, but it's actually not so difficult anymore, because you can find all of the recordings on this website, what I just zti.hu, and the folk songs mostly in this collection, and the instrumental. If you, Lawrence, think about, you played this one or no?
No.
No. That was not the Romanian dances. Which was it? So
I can't remember for sure, but that sounds
okay.
similar.
So because it's if it's the early instrumental settings of Bartók, then this is another collection which is in the, I will write it here. So it is not anymore so difficult, and the connection between the original sound and setting, the musical setting, is sometimes very close and sometimes extremely far. So that's why it is really sometimes, I think some of the, especially by the early pieces, is very great to hear too, and sometimes doesn't help at all, because in the later ages of especially Bartók's life work, they going further and further from the original melody very often.
Wonderful question. I would like to close by thanking everyone for their kind attention today. And it has been such a pleasure to have these two fantastic professors with us today. I would like to say thank you so much to Dr. Tóth and Dr. Némes. Köszönöm szépen. We are very grateful, and thank you to our friends from Ole Miss and Toronto and anywhere else that people have joined from. Please stay safe in this time. Please sing a lot, take care of each other, and I hope that we all have the time to just sort of listen to what's happening in the communities around us right now, and really just be good listeners.